Picture this. You just finished building your dream PC. Every part is perfect, the cable management is clean, the RGB is exactly how you wanted it. You hit the power button, Windows 11 boots up, and then you see it. A little watermark in the corner telling you to activate Windows. So you head to Microsoft's website to grab a license, and suddenly you're staring at a price tag north of $199 just for Windows 11 Pro, for an operating system that you need. To use the computer you just spent hundreds or thousands of dollars building. Somewhere out there, right now, someone is buying that exact same license for under $30. Same product key, same Windows 11 Pro, same features, a fraction of the price. And the wild part is, in a lot of cases, it actually works. So what's going on here? Is this some elaborate scam waiting to blow up in your face? Or is there a genuinely legitimate way to save yourself over $150? The honest answer is messier than a simple yes or no, and if you don't understand how this whole system works, you could end up losing your money, your data, or worse. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how Microsoft's licensing actually works, where these cheap keys really come from, which ones are worth the risk, which ones will get you burned, and how to protect yourself no matter which path you choose. And hey, if you're new here, welcome to Nolan Tech. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications because we upload new tech videos regularly that help you stay ahead. Let's start with something most people skip right over, what you're actually buying when you buy Windows. Microsoft doesn't just sell one version of Windows 11. There's Home, which covers most everyday users, gamers, students, people who just want a solid computer for browsing and streaming and schoolwork. Then there's Pro, which unlocks things like BitLocker device encryption, remote desktop connections, Hyper-V for running virtual machines, the ability to join a domain for business networks, and a handful of other features aimed at power users, developers, and small businesses. If none of that sounds like something you need, Home is genuinely fine. But if you're spinning up virtual machines, encrypting drives, or connecting to a company network, Pro earns its keep. Now here's where it gets interesting, because Microsoft doesn't sell just one type of license either. There are really three categories floating around, and understanding the differences is the key to understanding the entire cheap key ecosystem. The first is the retail license. This is the one you get when you buy directly from Microsoft's store or an authorized retailer like Best Buy or Amazon. Retail is the gold standard because it's transferable. If you build a new PC in a few years, you can deactivate Windows on the old machine and reactivate that same license on the new one. You also get to call Microsoft support directly if something breaks. It's the most flexible option, and that flexibility is exactly why it carries the highest price tag. The second type is the OEM license, which stands for Original Equipment Manufacturer. This is the version that ships pre-installed on a new laptop or desktop from companies like Dell, HP, Lenovo, or Acer. You can also buy standalone OEM keys, usually for less than retail. But there's a catch, and it's a big one. An OEM license is permanently married to the first motherboard it activates on. Swap out your motherboard, or try to move that license to a completely different computer, and it simply won't reactivate. The license effectively dies, along with the hardware it was born on. Support works differently too, since Microsoft expects the computer manufacturer, or whoever built the system, to handle troubleshooting instead of Microsoft doing it directly. The third category is volume licensing, sometimes labeled VLK or KMS. These exist purely for businesses, schools, and large organizations that need to activate Windows across dozens or hundreds of machines at once through a central server that IT departments manage. Here's the part that matters most for anyone shopping for a cheap key. Volume licenses are explicitly not meant for individual consumers. They're sold in bulk, with minimums often starting around 5 licenses, and they come loaded with usage restrictions. If you're one person buying a single volume license key off a marketplace website, you are, by definition, using it outside its intended purpose. So with those 3 categories in mind, you can probably already guess where all these unbelievably cheap Windows keys online are actually coming from. Welcome to what's known as the gray market. A quick but important distinction here. Gray market is not the same thing as black market. Black market means stolen or outright counterfeit goods. Gray market means the product itself is technically real and legitimate. It's just being sold through channels the manufacturer never intended, or in ways that break the original terms of sale. This distinction matters a lot, because it changes what kind of risk you're actually taking on. So let's break down where these keys actually come from, because there are several distinct sources, and they carry very different levels of risk. One major source is regional price arbitrage. Microsoft charges wildly different prices for the exact same product depending on the country. A Windows 11 Pro license that costs $200 in the United States might sell for a fraction of that in countries like India, Turkey, or parts of Eastern Europe, based on local purchasing power. Enterprising sellers buy up huge batches of these regionally discounted keys and resell them internationally at a markup that's still far cheaper than US retail pricing. The keys themselves are 100% genuine Microsoft products. The issue is that reselling them across regions this way violates Microsoft's geographic licensing agreements. In theory, Microsoft can detect your location through your IP address during activation and flag keys being used outside their intended region, though in practice, enforcement is inconsistent at best. Another common source is surplus OEM inventory. PC manufacturers order Windows licenses in enormous bulk quantities, and sometimes they simply overestimate demand. Rather than let unused keys sit there and go to waste, some of that surplus gets funneled to wholesalers, who then list them online at a discount. These are completely genuine Microsoft keys that will activate without issue. The gray area is that Microsoft's official position is that OEM keys are meant to be sold bundled with new hardware, not stripped out and sold on their own. The key still works fine. It's the sales channel that's technically off script. Then there's the Microsoft Developer Network, or MSDN, subscription pool. Developers and IT professionals pay for MSDN access specifically to get testing and development keys for Microsoft's software lineup, Windows included. The terms are crystal clear that these keys are for internal testing only, not commercial resale. Some subscribers ignore that and sell their unused MSDN keys online anyway. Again, real Microsoft keys, real activation, but using them this way breaks the subscription agreement. The riskiest tier of the gray market involves misused volume license keys. Some sellers get their hands on organizational VLK keys and quietly resell them one at a time to individual buyers. This is a direct and obvious violation of Microsoft's licensing terms, and it's also the category most likely to blow up in your face months down the line. Microsoft periodically audits volume license usage, and when they catch a key being used outside an approved organization, they can deactivate it instantly, no warning, no grace period. You could be running perfectly fine for half a year and then wake up one morning to a deactivated Windows installation. And then, at the very bottom of the barrel, you've got outright fraudulent keys. These are generated through cracking tools, purchased using stolen payment information, or simply invented and never tied to a real Microsoft license at all. Some of these won't activate anything. Others might work for a few days before getting blacklisted the moment Microsoft's systems notice the irregularity. Given all of that, here's the question everyone actually wants answered. Is any of this illegal? The honest answer is that it depends entirely on the source and how it's used. Buying a genuine OEM or retail key from a surplus reseller isn't illegal. You're not committing a crime by purchasing a discounted, legitimate product key. What you might be doing is violating Microsoft's terms of service, and that's a completely different category of problem. Breaking a terms of service agreement isn't a criminal offense, but it does give Microsoft the right to deactivate your license the moment they notice. Using an individual volume license key falls into that same bucket. A clear terms violation that Microsoft can act on whenever they choose. And if you happen to buy a key that turns out to have been purchased with a stolen credit card, that's obviously a fraud problem, though in nearly every documented case, the unaware buyer isn't the one who ends up facing consequences. If you're finding this breakdown useful, now's a good time to hit that like button and subscribe to Nolan Tech. It genuinely helps the channel keep making detailed videos like this one, and there's a lot more still to cover. Now let's get into the real risks, because understanding where keys come from is only half the picture. You also need to know what can actually go wrong. Risk number 1. The key just doesn't work. Some sellers are running pure scams, either sending a completely invalid code or nothing at all. If you paid through a platform with buyer protection, you have a decent shot at getting your money back. If you paid through something with zero recourse, that money is simply gone. Risk number 2, the key works at first and then dies later. This is the classic volume license horror story. Everything runs smoothly for weeks, or even months, and then one day, Microsoft's servers flag the key during a routine check, and your activation disappears overnight. You're left right back where you started, except now you're out whatever you originally paid. Risk number 3, minimal or non-existent support. Buy from an authorized channel and Microsoft has your back. Buy from the gray market and run into trouble. And Microsoft will simply point out that your key wasn't purchased through an approved channel and send you back to the seller. Some of these sellers vanish entirely after the sale, leaving you with no one to call. Risk number 4, compromised installation files. This is genuinely the scariest one. Some of the shadier key sellers bundle their product keys with a download link or USB drive containing a modified version of Windows itself. That modified installer can be carrying malware, spyware, or hidden backdoors that compromise your entire system from the moment you install it. The fix here is simple and non-negotiable. Always download the Windows installer straight from Microsoft's own website. Never from a third-party seller, no matter how convenient they make it look. Risk number 5, payment information theft. Some gray market storefronts exist specifically to harvest credit card data. They might even hand you a functioning key just to make the whole transaction feel legitimate, while the real goal is stealing your payment details for later fraud. This is exactly why using PayPal or a prepaid card is strongly advised whenever you're dealing with a less established seller. Okay, so with all of that laid out honestly, let's say you still want to roll the dice on a cheap key. Here's how to do it about as safely as the gray market allows. First, stick exclusively to OEM or retail keys and steer completely clear of anything labeled volume, KMS, or MAC. If a listing uses any of those terms, that's your signal to keep scrolling. Second, always pay with a method that offers buyer protection. PayPal is ideal because disputing a non-working key is straightforward. Credit cards work too, thanks to chargeback protection. Avoid debit cards tied directly to your bank account, and absolutely avoid cryptocurrency or wire transfers, which offer no recourse whatsoever if things go sideways. Third, only buy from sellers with an established track record and a large body of verifiable reviews. Marketplace platforms like Kingwin, G2A, and CD Keys host individual sellers and typically offer optional buyer protection programs for an added fee. There are also standalone software key retailers that operate more like traditional businesses rather than open marketplaces. They tend to offer more consistent customer service. Whichever route you go, read the negative reviews just as carefully as the positive ones, since that's usually where you'll spot the actual failure patterns. Expect to pay somewhere in the $25 to $50 range for a legitimate Windows 11 Pro key. Anything dramatically cheaper than that is a red flag, not a bargain. Fourth, confirm exactly what type of key you're buying before you hand over any money. A reputable seller will state clearly whether it's OEM or retail. If a listing is vague, message the seller directly and get their answer in writing, ideally through the platform's built-in chat, so there's a paper trail if you need to dispute anything later. Fifth, save everything. Order confirmation, payment receipt, any messages with the seller, and a screenshot of the original listing showing the price and description. If your key ever stops working, this documentation is what makes a dispute actually winnable. Sixth, test the key the moment you receive it. Don't let it sit unused for weeks. The sooner you activate and confirm it works, the sooner you can flag a problem if something's wrong, and most decent sellers will replace a dead key quickly if you report it fast. Seventh, and this one's non-negotiable, always download the Windows installer directly from Microsoft's own website using their official media creation tool. The key you bought is only for activation. There is never a legitimate reason to install Windows from a file a key seller sent you. Once you're actually activating, here's what to expect. Head into Settings, then System, then Activation, and you'll see confirmation of whether Windows is active and what license channel it's running on. If it says Retail Channel, congratulations, you've got a genuine retail key. For a deeper look, open an administrator command prompt and run slmgr.xlv to pull up detailed licensing information. Some OEM keys require phone activation instead of the usual automatic online process. If Windows prompts you to call Microsoft, that's completely normal for certain key types, not a red flag. You'll dial into an automated system, punch in your installation ID, and receive a confirmation code to enter back into Windows. It's a little old school, but it works fine. Now, maybe after hearing all of this, the gray market still feels like more risk than you want to take on. Totally fair. Here are your legitimate alternatives. Option 1, just buy directly from Microsoft or an authorized retailer and accept the full price. Yes, it stings, but you get a guaranteed retail license, transferable to future builds, backed by real Microsoft support, with zero risk of sudden deactivation. If peace of mind matters more to you than the savings, this is the safest possible route. Option 2, check whether you already own a usable license without realizing it. If you ever purchased a standalone retail copy of Windows 10, that license upgrades to Windows 11 for free and remains fully transferable. Dig through old email receipts or your Microsoft account to see if there's a forgotten license sitting there. Just keep in mind that if your Windows came pre-installed on a laptop or pre-built desktop, that's an OEM license locked to that specific hardware and can't be moved elsewhere. Option 3, simply run Windows without activating it at all. This is completely legal. Microsoft lets you download, install, and use Windows 11 indefinitely without a product key. You get full functionality, all security updates, and full access to install software and play games. The only real downsides are a small watermark reminding you Windows isn't activated, and limited access to certain personalization settings like desktop background and accent colors through the standard settings menu, though workarounds exist for that too. For a lot of people, especially those on a tight budget, these limitations are a total non-issue, and you can always activate later without needing to reinstall anything. Option 4, keep an eye out for sales through authorized retailers. Microsoft, Amazon, Best Buy, and similar stores occasionally discount Windows licenses, typically somewhere in the 20 to 30% range. It's not as dramatic as gray market pricing, but it's a genuine risk-free discount if you're patient enough to wait for one. Option 5, if you're a student, Check whether your school has a software agreement with Microsoft. A lot of universities give students free or heavily discounted access to Windows, Office, and other tools through education licensing programs. Your school's IT department page is usually the fastest way to find out. Let's run through a few questions. People ask constantly about this whole topic. Can you get in legal trouble for using a cheap key? In practice, individual consumers are almost never pursued legally. Microsoft's enforcement mechanism is simply deactivation, not lawsuits, unless you're knowingly involved in something like reselling stolen payment-funded keys at scale. Do cheap keys carry viruses? The key itself is just a string of characters. It can't infect anything. The danger comes entirely from sketchy installation files. Some sellers bundle alongside the key, which is exactly why downloading Windows only from Microsoft matters so much. Why doesn't Microsoft just shut this whole market down? Because a large chunk of these keys are technically genuine products, just sold through unauthorized channels, and Microsoft arguably benefits more from people running properly licensed Windows, even through gray channels, than from people pirating it outright or abandoning the ecosystem for something like Linux. What about keys priced absurdly low, like $5 or $10? At that price point, you're almost certainly looking at a misused volume license or something even shadier. Genuine OEM keys generally start around $20 to $30 at minimum, so anything dramatically below that should raise immediate suspicion. Can you upgrade from Home to Pro using a cheap key? Yes, but that typically only works with retail-style keys designed for upgrades, not OEM keys meant for fresh installs. And if you're wondering whether old Windows 10 keys still work, the answer is yes. Windows 10 and Windows 11 Pro share a compatible activation system, and Microsoft's free upgrade path from a legitimate Windows 10 license carries over cleanly to Windows 11. If you spend any time in tech communities, you'll notice the real-world experiences with this stuff are genuinely mixed. Plenty of people report grabbing a key for $20 or $30, activating without a hitch, and running for years with zero issues, insisting they'd do it again in a heartbeat. Others describe keys that worked great for a few months before quietly getting flagged and deactivated, usually because it turned out to be a misused volume license or a key resold to multiple buyers simultaneously. Those folks either gambled again on another cheap key or gave up and paid full price to avoid the hassle a second time. And then there's a smaller group who got outright scammed, receiving keys that never worked at all, usually because they paid through a method with no protection or trusted a seller with zero reputation behind them. Meanwhile, people who build computers professionally for a living often describe purchasing hundreds of OEM keys over the years, treating the rare dud as simply a cost of doing business, given how much they save in aggregate. So where does that leave you? If certainty and zero risk matter most, buy directly from Microsoft or an authorized retailer and never think about it again. If you're comfortable trading a bit of uncertainty for meaningful savings, stick to established sellers, retail or OEM keys only, protected payment methods, and keep your documentation just in case. And if money is genuinely tight right now, running Windows unactivated is a perfectly legal, completely free option you can upgrade from whenever your budget allows. There's also an ethical debate baked into all of this worth mentioning briefly. Some argue that buying gray market keys undercuts Microsoft's revenue and props up a system built on broken agreements. Others point out that Microsoft is a company worth well over $2 trillion, that enterprise licensing is where the real money comes from, and that regional consumer pricing is somewhat arbitrary to begin with. Neither side is objectively wrong, and honestly, it's up to you to decide where you land on it. If things do go wrong after a purchase, here's the playbook. Go back to the seller first and lay out the situation clearly. If you bought through a marketplace with buyer protection, file a formal claim and attach your documentation, order details, screenshots showing the deactivation, all of it. Most reputable sellers will issue a replacement key without much friction. If the seller goes silent or refuses to help, and you paid through PayPal or a credit card, open a dispute with your payment provider directly. It can take a few weeks to resolve, but with solid documentation, you have a real shot at getting your money back. Worst case scenario, you're back to your original 3 choices. Gamble on another cheap key, pay full price for a legitimate license, or simply run unactivated in the meantime. One important caveat before we wrap up. If you're setting up licensing for a business or any environment where compliance actually matters legally, don't touch the gray market at all. Buy legitimate licenses through Microsoft or an authorized reseller. The professional and legal fallout from improper business licensing is a completely different level of consequence compared to a single home user. And if you're building a PC for a friend or family member, think twice before using a gray market key on their behalf. If it gets deactivated down the line, you're the one they'll be calling, and that's an awkward position to be in over $100 savings. So here's where everything lands. Windows 11 Pro runs $199 through official Microsoft channels. Gray market alternatives typically run $20 to $50, sourced from regional pricing gaps, surplus OEM inventory, misused developer subscriptions, or repurposed volume licenses. None of that is illegal for you as an individual buyer, though it frequently violates Microsoft's terms of service, which means Microsoft retains the right to deactivate your license whenever they detect it. The risks are real. Keys that never activate, keys that die months later, minimal support if things go wrong, and genuine security danger if you download installation media from anywhere other than Microsoft directly. If you choose to go this route, stick with established sellers, protected payment methods, OEM or retail keys only, thorough documentation, and always pull your Windows installer straight from Microsoft. At the end of the day, this market exists because Microsoft's retail pricing creates real demand for cheaper alternatives. And millions of people worldwide are running Windows on gray market keys right now without any major issues. Whether that's ethical is genuinely debatable, but it's undeniably widespread. You now understand exactly how the system works, where the real risks live, and how to protect yourself no matter which direction you choose to go. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe to Nolan Tech, and turn on notifications so you never miss future tech videos. So tell me, what's the first Windows 11 setting you're going to change after you get activated?